Welcome to this explainer. Grab your marine historian hats today because we are diving headfirst into the terrifying, mysterious, and absolutely fascinating history of the Kraken. We're going to play the role of storytellers sharing ancient secrets, but we'll also be rigorous scientists, shifting from Hollywood myths to deep-sea realities. We're going to see exactly how a very real biological creature was inflated over centuries into the ultimate maritime nightmare. Right, let's clear the air right out of the gate and bust a massive pop culture myth. If you've seen modern films like Clash of the Titans, you'd probably think the Kraken is some sort of ultimate weapon used by the Greek gods. But contrary to what Hollywood tells us, the Kraken has absolutely zero connection to ancient Greek mythology or even the Greek sea monster Cetus. It never fought Perseus, and Poseidon definitely never commanded anyone to release it. Section 1. Roots of the Crooked Tree. So if it isn't Greek, where is it from? The Kraken is actually a distinctly Scandinavian nightmare. We have to look to the treacherous, freezing waters of the North Atlantic, specifically the dangerous icy seas between Norway, Iceland, and Greenland. What's really fascinating is where the name actually comes from. The word itself roots back to the Old Norse term Kraken. This referred to a malformed crooked tree or a primitive drag anchor made out of a tangled bush trunk. I mean, picture that for a second. A tangled, crooked drag anchor being pulled up from the freezing, dark water perfectly conjures the image of a multi-tentacled beast lurking beneath the waves. But long before the specific word Kraken was widely used, 13th century sailors were whispering stories of the Hafgufa, which translates to sea steam or sea reek. There's a 1250 Norwegian didactic text called The King's Mirror that describes this massive creature, claiming it lured fish into a mouth as wide as a fjord. Now, there is some scholarly disagreement here. Some experts think the Hafgufa was actually based on sightings of trap-feeding whales and was only conflated with the Kraken later on, while others see it as the direct predecessor. But either way, it planted the seed for a colossal, hungry monster in the Norse imagination. Section 2. Morals and Island Traps. So why did these wild legends actually take hold? Well, medieval sailors didn't just fear these monsters, they actively needed these stories to rationalize their terrifying environment. The harsh North Atlantic pushed sailors to create the Kraken to explain away very real threats. Imagine being out in a chaotic storm. You're experiencing psychological phenomena like pareidolia, your brain tricking you into seeing meaningful, terrifying patterns in floating debris or massive wave swells. They also likely misinterpreted glowing, bioluminescent deep-sea squid as the flaming eyes of a supernatural monster. Ultimately, creating a monster was a way to rationalize the sudden loss of a ship and project their profound fear of the unmapped abyss onto a tangible, defeatable enemy. This legend also served a really important societal function. It was a moral warning against hubris. In Norse lore, creatures like the Lingbakker and eventually the Kraken itself would use an island disguise to drown unwary sailors. This perfectly mirrors the medieval Christian Aspidoshalone, which was a deceptive beast that lured sailors onto its back before dragging them down to their doom. As Scandinavia Christianized, these sea monster tales were actually conflated with biblical beasts, like the Leviathan, to symbolize the deceptive nature of the devil and the lethal dangers of the natural world. But interestingly, it wasn't all doom and gloom out there on the water. Paradoxically, fishermen believed this monster attracted massive, teeming schools of fish. If a fisherman returned with an unbelievable haul, the locals would knowingly nod and say, "You must have fished on Kraken." It linked this terrifying maritime legend to highly successful, albeit incredibly dangerous, fishing spots. Moving on to Section 3, from pseudoscience to science. Let's fast forward to the Enlightenment era and see how this medieval moral warning mutated into a wildly exaggerated pseudoscientific fact. Tracing the timeline, the actual term Kraken first officially hits the books in 1646. But the real culprit of the legendary exaggeration we know today was a Danish-Norwegian bishop named Erik Pontoppidan in 1752. He basically accidentally turned biological observations into modern folklore. He published accounts claiming the beast had a 2.5-kilometer circumference and that an entire regiment of soldiers could practice maneuvers on its back. It wasn't until 1857 that a scientist named Jan-Baptist Steenstrup finally tamed the myth by officially classifying its real-world inspiration. Section 4. The Scientific Revelation. Eventually, rigorous marine historians and biologists stepped in and stripped away those wild Enlightenment-era exaggerations. And the scientific reality they found was the giant squid, known scientifically as Architeuthis ducks. The contrast between myth and reality here is just stark. While the myth claims the creature was island-sized, spun up massive whirlpools, and deliberately hunted ships, biology confirms a deep-sea dweller that, while huge, measuring up to 18 meters long with the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, is actually prey. It gets hunted by sperm whales. And just to clarify a common mix-up, while the colossal squid gets a ton of media attention today, it's Architeuthis ducks, the giant squid, that is historically confirmed as the primary inspiration for these specific ancient reports. When you look at the natural explanations for the myth, it all just clicks into place. Early folklore was absolutely based on real observations. Imagine being a medieval sailor and seeing massive, decaying, partially digested tentacles washing ashore, or witnessing a violent surface battle between a sperm whale and a giant squid. Add in trap-feeding whales that look like cavernous, gaping jaws, or the terrifying Moskrestramen tidal whirlpools off the coast of Norway being blamed on a submerged monster. It is the absolute perfect recipe for a legend. As this analysis perfectly sums up, the Kraken is the ultimate example of how a tale grows in the telling. It's an incredible process of oral storytelling, taking a nugget of biological reality, an 18-meter squid, and inflating it into a ship-crushing, whirlpool-spinning behemoth over the course of centuries. Which brings us to our final section, a global mirror of fear. Because Scandinavian sailors definitely weren't the only ones terrified by giant tentacles in the deep. If we look across diverse seafaring cultures, we see that they independently developed their own giant cephalopod legends. You have the Lusca in the Caribbean attacking divers and blue holes, the giant red Akakoda Kamui of the Ainu people in Japan, and Taweke in Maori tradition in New Zealand. Why did similar legends pop up independently all over the globe? Because these myths are a universal human response to encountering colossal, totally alien-looking marine life. The terror of the deep is a fundamentally shared human experience. Over centuries, we watched the Kraken evolve from a practical maritime warning for terrified sailors into an exaggerated pseudo-scientific marvel during the Enlightenment, and finally into a psychological symbol. It functions as a mirror for humanity's shifting fears about the unmapped abyss and the uncontrollable forces of nature that we still struggle to comprehend. Which leaves us with a provocative thought to end this explainer. We've scientifically classified the giant squid and mapped much of our oceans, officially demystifying the Kraken. But as we continue to explore the final frontiers of our world, the deepest, darkest oceanic trenches, and even the vastness of outer space, what new monsters are we projecting into the unknown today? Thanks for exploring the depths with me.